And good evening and welcome to this presentation. The Cincinnati Railroad Club presents the Carolinas through a Railfan's lens. I'm Jonathan Higgins. Tonight we're going to be taking you through a virtual journey in the Carolinas. So welcome everyone on YouTube and here in the Cincinnati Union Terminal in the Newsreel Theater. So I'm Jonathan Higgins. I've been a rail fan for over 30 years. I've lived in Massachusetts, North Carolina, and Ohio. Not that I spend a lot of time doing it, but I'm also a modeler. I have an N-scale layout. Not a professional photographer by any means, but I do enjoy doing it. I've been doing that for over 10 years now. I have a Nikon D5600. If you're familiar with cameras, you'll know that model. I'm also a scanner expert. So as long as I've been a rail fan, I've also been a scanner expert. So I've had a scanner since I was a little kid, and I've loved trains since I was a little kid. So the hobbies go hand in hand, which, you know, you're listening to the train communication on the scanner and then watching the trains, of course. I started the Train Aficionado blog back in 2013. So I've been doing that blog, you know, for over 10 years now. And then all of a sudden I started producing YouTube shows. I started off with the Scanner Guys. I worked for a company called Scanner Master for over a decade selling police scanners. And then I left the company to pursue other things. And then come to find out, I missed, you know, talking about scanners. So I ended up doing a show called The Scanner Guys, and that airs on YouTube, on the Scanner Guys YouTube channel on the second and fourth Wednesdays of each month. And then once I did that, I said, why don't I do a train show? So I ended up doing Train Aficionado Live on YouTube, which is on its own channel, on the first and third Wednesdays of every month, and that's at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. So if you're looking to watch some shows about scanners and trains, you know, definitely check out those YouTube channels. So I've been doing that for a couple of years, 2019 when I started the Scanner Guys. And then in 2020, I started Train Aficionado Live. A little bit of history about myself. So I grew up in Middleborough, Massachusetts, and there was a small Conrail yard. I'm probably dating myself, you know, Conrail. I'm not as old as some people, but, you know, I was back in the day with Conrail. So my dad and I watched them build trains in the yard. And then also there was a train called the Cape Codder, which would run through town. And that was the only train at that point that ran passenger service. And it was during the summer on the weekends. So the train would originate from New York City and then make its way to Hyannis, Massachusetts. So Friday night, leave New York, make its way to Hyannis. People would spend the weekend, and then the Cape Codder would take them back on Sunday night. So my dad and I would pick a location. Sometimes the train would be running on time, sometimes it would be running late. But we would try to get photos. And of course, I had a point and shoot film camera. So you know how that could be, a little point and shoot camera. I'm not able to zoom in, and sometimes I got some good photos, sometimes I didn't. But it was a lot of fun. You know, my dad and I did that a lot during on Sundays on the weekend. So if you're into my presentation, make sure you follow, like, and subscribe to my social media. I'm on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. And then, of course, the website, trainaficionado.com. All right, well, let's take a look at the presentation. I'm going to kind of take you through a tour of the main line that runs through Charlotte for Norfolk Southern. So when I first moved to the Charlotte area, I was living in South Carolina in Fort Mill, which is just outside of Charlotte. So literally I could just 5-minute drive, I was back in North Carolina. So I knew there was tracks in Belmont, Ohio. So I ended up rail fanning over there. I took a new job when I moved down into North Carolina, and I wanted to do some rail fanning. So many a times I would go to Belmont, which is milepost 389.3, and I would get some traffic here, and I would get some really cool photos. This is one of the first photos I took when I was down in North Carolina. There was a parking lot that was right by the railroad track. So I parked there, set up my camp chair. At that point, I was in a relationship with somebody, but they haven't moved down to North Carolina. So I had a lot of time on my hands. I didn't have, a significant other, saying, hey, can you go do this on the weekend, blah, blah, blah. I had the weekends free to myself. So, I went rail fanning on the weekends. So here's one of the shots. It was starting to get a little dark here in Belmont. Here's another shot that I've taken. This train is actually running light, and it's going to go on a siding, which we'll see in a moment, and get attached onto a train on the siding. Here we go. It's already on that siding. And then I caught another train, and I got a really nice side-by-side shot. Looks like a maintenance away person was there as well. So these photos were taken in 2019. So basically, I would sit there for hours in railfan. And then I was able to get another shot here. And there's that train connected up to a train on the siding. And then we see almost like a meat shot, but really the two trains, one's moving, the other one is not. And this was a really cool spot. So I would get hungry, and there was a really cool pizza place that was there, and they changed ownerships, which I was upset about. But I would walk up. It was right in the downtown area of Belmont, so I'd go get a small personal pizza, bring it back, eat my pizza, watch some trains. That's what I loved about this location. I could get some pizza. So traveling a little further north, so we're making our way into Charlotte, and I discovered this shortly after I'd moved out of North Carolina. They have an intermodal rail yard, which you can see from an overpass. And I was able to get these photos from the overpass, and you can get some pretty decent shots with a long range lens, being able to see them, adding and removing the containers off. I really wish that I discovered this sooner, because I could have done some rail fanning watching this, and it's certainly pretty cool. But now we're able to see it outside of our club room right here at the Cincinnati Union Terminal in the yard here. So traveling a little further north on the line. Now, this is not a known rail fanning spot. So my friend Will, which lives out in Massachusetts, he's got an N-scale layout, and he's basically modeled it for the New York Central. So, of course, I'm looking at the Heritage Unit app, and I really wanted to get him some photos of the Norfolk Southern Heritage Unit. So I ended up finding it. It was tied down on the main. So I took so many photos of it. I actually waited for a meet, so I could get a meet shot. But I took a whole bunch of photos of it from every angle. And then, of course, I blew up his cell phone, and say, hey, look what I caught. Here's another shot of it, a meet shot, which is really cool, of the New York Central Heritage Unit. And then you're going to see a couple of the North Carolina commuter trains shots in this slide deck. But this is one shot, basically running from Charlotte all the way up to Raleigh, if I remember correctly. And this was really cool. I waited for this because I wanted to get a cool meet shot, and the commuter rail runs on a schedule, so I was able to kind of plan this out. So we're going to go a little further north, and we're going to go up to Kannapolis, North Carolina. This is actually where my dad is living, down in North Carolina right now. And he does a lot of rail fanning. There's a parking lot that runs through the downtown, and you can get some really cool shots here. Here's an NS. This is actually traveling northbound. There is a train station there to be able to pick up the commuter rail. But this is one of the trains heading northbound. Here's a unique train that I was able to catch. Siemens, will do these heavy pieces of equipment, which has a locomotive. They tack on their caboose, and then they have that large, I don't know what it is, but huge thing on there. And they're basically moving it to wherever it needs to go. I've actually caught this train actually twice, not the same exact train, but a similar move with this type of equipment. It's rare to be able to see a caboose or what they call a shoving platform. This caboose I used to see all the time. The local would use it as a shoving platform, and this was a local that basically ran from the yard in Linwood all the way into Cincinnati. So, and there was actually a spur that was used in the town I lived in called Landis, which I'll show you in a little bit. Now we're up to Landis, North Carolina. So Landis, I actually lived there for a couple of years. I was able to convince the person that I was with to buy a house there because the railroad tracks ran right through the downtown. I was literally 5 minutes away. Putting together this slideshow, because I lived in a town that had the railroad tracks and it was only 5 minutes away, I had to go through probably about 4,000 photos over the couple of years that I was there. So there's a lot of photos from Landis. I did add a lot of them to the slide deck. We'll take a look at a few of them right now. So Landis is milepost 345.6. Last time I went to Landis, this was after when I moved out. This was during Thanksgiving when I went down there to visit my dad. They actually put this mural on a building and kind of highlighting the railroad history here. They actually moved the train depot that was there when they eventually put double track in the downtown. So the building was originally built in 1901 and then enlarged in 1910. The station closed in 1973, and then it was moved when they made the line double track again, and it was moved to a park that was pretty close to where the track is. You can actually see the building on this shot. If you look towards the right, you'll see the building right after the mural there. So of course, Amtrak runs through. They run a couple of overnight trains. They do run a daytime train in the morning, the early morning, that runs out of Atlanta, Georgia, up to New York. So I was able to catch this usually, I think it was about 7 o'clock in the morning, if I remember correctly. So I'd have to get up early in the morning and make sure I take the shots like this. That's why you can see it's sun starting to come up. And this is in downtown Landis. Here's that local, and you can see that it's pushing back to pick up these box cars because there's a spur. You can't really see it in the shot, but there's a spur line that they pick up some local cars. So he was doing the move here with jockeying everything in and out of that spur. So I was able to catch this in Landis, and I was off from work. So typically they did a lot of this stuff while I was working. So I was off from work. I heard it on the scanner. And I said, oh, the local's in town. I found a street that was dead-ended, and then I was able to shoot this photo here. Here's another photo from Landis. This is Auto Racks traveling right through the downtown, making its way into downtown here. Here's a couple more shots. Mixed goods, Norfolk Southern on the very left, and then of course another North Carolina train, commuter rail, and they run locomotives on each end, and typically they run single level cars and usually about 4 cars like that. Here's another North Carolina train here, and this is making its way south to Charlotte.
Where are the mileposts from?
The mileposts are actually the mileposts of the line.
Alexandria.
Yeah. And there's a defect detector right in downtown Landis as well. So the defect detector is milepost 345.6. Here's a rain shot that I took, and you're probably wondering, boy, he must have got soaking wet. I mean, the rain was coming down heavy this day. And the great thing about Landis, and I'll show you the next slide. Well, it'll probably be the next slide. I'll save that for a moment. So here's another train coming through the fog, some tankers heading south. Here's the reason why I didn't get wet. So the town of Landis put a beautiful gazebo, for the downtown. They'll make it look pretty. But for me, it was a rail fanning pavilion. So right by the tracks, I could sit there in the rain, whatever weather, I could sit there and enjoy it. And a lot of times when I would go leave the house after work, go sit in the gazebo. My dog Watson, I would bring him with me. He would sit there with me and watch trains. I would photograph it. In this shot is actually my dad, and this was a photo that I took during the last time I was down there for Thanksgiving. You can see him inside the gazebo there, and it's just really awesome. They put that gazebo because I used it a lot. Heritage units. I was able to catch some heritage units when I was living in Landis. Of course, this is the Conrail heritage unit running behind the lead locomotive there. Interstate was another one. This is actually heading northbound. My favorite and my first heritage unit ever, the Virginian. If you've watched any of my presentations before, Virginian was my first heritage unit, which I caught in Pennsylvania. This is when I started rail fanning, freight. Being from Massachusetts, if you want to see Amtrak or you want to see commuter rail, you could see it as much as you want. As for freight, I didn't see a ton of freight unless, I would venture out during the week. I would see a local that would service Attleboro, and then I would have to go up to the north in order to be able to do it, during the weekend. So going back to the Virginian, I've discovered that it was going to be going through on the main line through Altoona. So I ended up finding a rail fanning location that would be perfect light, and I waited there for hours for it. Hours. I wasn't gonna miss it. I ended up getting phenomenal photos, and I believe it's still the banner on the Train Aficionado Facebook page. The photo that I got of my first heritage unit. Here's that Siemens, whatever that thing is on there. That's the second photo that I got. Different color, same caboose there. One more of downtown Landis. You can see that this is a crossing with no horn. But I would be rail fanning, and the crew would violate that horn thing and blow the horn at me, which I kind of thought was funny because there's a no horn zone. Circus train. Now, this is not the Ringling Brothers circus train. I can't remember what the other company that they used.
Street circuses.
Yes, that's right. Was making its way through town. So I was riding with my dad, and thankfully I was a passenger, and I saw this. I said, pull into that parking lot. And I had my camera on me. I jumped out of the car, took this photo, and I was able to get it. And it was literally pure crap luck, because the thing was, if I was a couple minutes later, it would have been blocked by the woods, and I would have never seen it go past. Sunset photo here. I was out late, and you can, of course, see the track just below the graphic. But this was a really cool photo that I got, just before going back home on one of my rail fanning trips to downtown. You can see the water tower there. It was just a really cool shot. So this is on the border of Landis and a town called China Grove. So this is a cool spot. Another road, basically, when they double tracked the line again, they cut off a whole bunch of streets. So the great thing about it, it allowed for rail fans to be able to basically use those dead-ended streets to be able to rail fan. So this was right by a cemetery, so I was able to get this photo. Actually made it into a black and white, came out pretty cool. So now we're traveling a little bit further north on the line. And this was another favorite location of mine. I've got tons of photos here. On the left of your screen is the passenger station. The platform, of course, is there. And I believe there was a track where the grass strip is originally, but the tracks are gone. But the building sets back a little bit further. This is on an overpass. So this is a really cool spot to get some photos. You can see the signals. You've got the crossover track right there. But yeah, I mean, this is one of my favorite spots to be able to get some photos because I could get it right on the overpass. Here's another train. This train's actually coming southbound, and the other train was heading north. The Y, which is here, lots of great places to take photos. You can actually rail fan inside the Y. I was actually rail fanning one time with my dad here. We had camp chairs set up. We were there for the day. So we're sitting there. The police come down the dead end road. And I'm going, oh no, are they going to give us a hard time? Nope. He asked me, did you see this guy? He's acting a bit peculiar. He gave my dad and I a description. And I said, no, we haven't seen him. And then the next thing he said, hey, have you caught anything good for trains today? So, he knew that people would rail fan here, so he didn't give us a hard time. So it was just a great little town to be able to go rail fanning. So, of course, I've got the NS 4002 here. This is going down the S line, heading towards Asheville, I should say. Here's another train going down the S line. So the reason why I've gotten a lot of trains going down the S line, because they would originate from Lynwood Yard originally back in the day. I think it was NS 135, if I remember correctly, would leave Linwood on time every day. So, of course, Linwood is just north of here, so I would get this train every freaking day because I knew it was getting out on time and get photos of it. So I think that's 135. 135 is got a different route now. When they closed Linwood Yard, they ended up making it originate from somewhere else. It could have a different number at this point. Another sunset shot, me sitting in my truck board. I mean, most of the time I rail fanned alone, so I'm like, oh, what a cool shot I could take. So I ended up taking the sunset shot through my mirror there. Another cool shot. This is actually going past the Y, heading southbound on the main line. Nice, cool black and white shot I was able to shoot. Long distance shot right here, signals above, which those came in handy while I was rail fanning to see if you got a green signal, something's coming. This photo here was taken last Thanksgiving. You can tell it's more of a fall photo there. And I believe this train ended up going on the S line. So, and then of course we have the commuter making its way northbound, passing the station here. I was right in the Y, and so it was, and being inside the Y, I was able to take photos in any direction, and it's pretty wide open there. And here is a, getting to be dusk. North Carolina Transportation Museum. I've spent a lot of time there. I became a member of the museum, so I could go there whenever I wanted. So I really enjoyed, a lot of the events they had there. Here is Barber Junction, the depot that they actually moved from the S line over here. It was built in 1898 and then moved in 1980. The building that you see right in the shot is the original building, and then they built a replica building for the restrooms right behind it. Beautiful locomotive, still in operation. They use it all the time. I was able to operate this locomotive. It was a birthday gift, and I was able to operate this, and I was the first person of the day that got to operate this locomotive. First time operating a steam locomotive.
It's the engine will not have it wasn't for 2 weeks.
Yeah. So I was super excited. You know, the throttle is very sensitive. So he said, just don't go too fast with it because you get it going pretty fast. He was absolutely right. So I ended up making back and forth movements with it right inside the property. It was a lot of fun. They were using this for passenger service at the museum. You know, it was really cool being able to see that leading their passenger cars. I also got a photo of it, you know, carrying all of the equipment it normally carries for the first responders training. We'll see that later in the slide deck. Here's another shot of it, you know, making its way in between the buildings here. The great thing about the North Carolina Transportation Museum, it's got all the transportation, you know, cars, trucks, planes, and of course, trains. The museum is on a property where they used to service and do all this stuff, and a yard was actually right in there too. So it is a transportation museum. There's a lot of train stuff there, and I highly recommend if you're going down to North Carolina to check it out. I was able to capture some heritage units and some special painted schemes in the property as well. This is the 911 locomotive for NS. And this was on the turntable.
Where is it?
The North Carolina Transportation Museum.
Yeah, where, what city is it?
Spencer.
Charlotte. Charlotte.
Spencer.
Well, these are north of Charlotte.
And then they had the Spirit of the Armed Forces locomotive there on the same day as well. So this was CSX's equipment that was there. And then we also had one other locomotive. So you can see that they had each one of these locomotives, they put it on the turntable. And I was able to get shots of the trains, you know, being turned on the turntable, and some really cool shots because I was able to kind of, you know, get some really cool things, angles in there. And then not only did we have the 911 Norfolk Southern, we also had the CSX locomotive, and they were side by side. And believe it or not, you know, the museum was open. You're looking at these shots, you would think, you know, how the heck did you get it with no people? I mean, it was just great to be able to go there and be able to take photos. Here I am with 611. Now, 611 is so big that they have to take the tender off in order to put it in the engine house. So the thing with 611, I paid her a lot of visits when COVID happened. So the museum was open with social distancing. So of course, 611 wasn't doing any excursions or anything. So basically it was already down there and it basically stayed there. So during COVID, they actually had, for $30, they had a presentation of the history of 611, and then you got to go and sit in the cab of it. Now, mind you, you know, if you saw any of the fundraiser events that they do now with 611, you've got to pay a lot of money in order to get up in the cab or to be at the throttle. So this was literally a gift. So I went there. They did an excellent presentation. Then I was able to go up in the cab and sit in the cab. It was in the roundhouse, as you can see here. But yeah, it was super cool. I mean, the thing about it, and it still being a rail fan for such a long time, when you see this locomotive and stand next to it inside of a building, it really like, holy crap, this thing is huge. It really, you know, I mean, seeing it inside of a building is just, yeah. And I'm hoping to see that in September, the big boy. So finally, you know, COVID was starting to taper down, and 611 was eventually going to be going to Pennsylvania. So, you know, they pulled it out of the roundhouse and they were prepping it for its journey up north. And of course, it was going to be a ferry move, you know, because it doesn't have positive train control inside of it. So they kind of was quiet about when they were going to do it. You know, there was a rough schedule that people were speculating where they were going to do it. And I was expecting a lot of rail fans when they did move it. So I ended up following a lot of Facebook pages, and they speculated on Monday, May the 24th of 2022, they were going to be moving it up north. So I was off from work, and I went there, and sure enough, it moved. And I was able to get photos of it on its own without the Norfolk Southern locomotive on the head end, because it was inside the property of the North Carolina Transportation Museum. You know something? I was the only rail fan that was there getting these photos at this location. I was like, I figured I was going to have to fight a photo line, or some fool that didn't know what they were doing is going to jump in front of you and mess up the shot. Nope, I was it. So I got these shots of it, you know, making its way to the locomotive, which is just a little further down the tracks. I did chase it some. So here it is. This is a really cool location that's just north of Spencer. It's up on a hill. It's a little dirt road that you basically drive into, and then you have to back up and turn around. I used to rail fan a lot at this location, and it was a known rail fanning location. I'm not too sure whose property it was. One year, the grass got a little high up there, so some rail fan brought his weed whacker and took care of the grass so people could have spots to stand. So I ended up taking photos of the locomotive up here. So this is just north of Spencer, just south of the Lynwood Yard. One other story here. So there was rail fans here. So we had a photo line going on. I wasn't the first, because I was down at the museum taking the photos, apparently by myself down here, because nobody was there, and I ended up going to this location to chase it. So there's a bunch of guys there. So we got in our photo line. A couple of young kids, I'm not too sure if they're rail fans. They come in with their phones, and they get down right in front of us. I'm like, okay, you're in our shot. So one guy says, hey, if you're going to do this, get over here. You're in our shots. So Chris, I don't think kids. Later did I know, I believe the guy told me he was like a state trooper or a police officer. He said, yeah, I have no problem telling people to move. So thankfully, you know, they got out of shot and everybody was able to get their photo. This is another favorite spot, which I'm going to show you some photos in a little bit. So this is up north of the Linwood Yard in a spot that's called Lee. And of course now, you know, it's got the NS locomotive on the front end. But I was so happy to be able to get it on its own power leaving North Carolina. So now we're going to take a look at some photos in Spencer. I know we kind of went off the beaten path there, you know, going to the museum. So Hackett Street, there's a defect detector here, which is really neat, which you can see in the shot there. And this is a road that they dead ended, you know, because of the two tracks, they eliminated this road. So this was a great spot for rail fanning. So I was able to take lots of photos here, lots of space to be able to move about. There's a little spur line track, which is serviced by this business here, which I could, shoot my camera into there if there was anything interesting. Oh yeah, derail for the, for that as well. You can see that in the shot. I'll go back to that so you can kind of see. Yeah, yeah, you can see it right there, the little derail that they have to flip. So this was in the height of COVID, and of course, I believe my dad and I were actually social distancing. So we wanted to go rail fanning. So I'm on this side of the tracks, and my dad's on the other side of the tracks. So, we're rail fanning, shooting the breeze. I was kind of concerned because this was early in COVID. I didn't know, if I got it, I didn't want to give it to him or whatever. But we wanted to go rail fanning. So I said, oh, this is enough distance, you being on one side of the tracks and I'm being on the other. So we ended up rail fanning together and doing this. So that was a lot of fun. So we were talking across the tracks. Here's another shot of another train coming through Hackett. So this is just a little bit further north in Spencer. This is the local running light back to the Lynwood Yard. A lot of cool shots here. Here is that safety train, as you can see here, the training train, which was really cool. I don't think I knew this was coming, but when I saw it, I was literally, oh boy, I got tons of photos, but this was one of the photos I got going over the bridge. Here's another one up in the hill that I used the weed whacker with, and you can see that bridge down there. So you can take photos, down by the bridge as long as you're off the ballast. I've taken photos tons of times over there, and then of course up in the hill. Funny thing, I was rail fanning there, and it was my dad and I, and we were down by the bridge, off the road, there's a little cutout there where you can park your car and take photos safely away from the tracks. So one of the Norfolk Southern guys come with their white vehicle down this pathway that you can see by the railroad tracks, and then they were going to turn in where we were at. So he gets out of the car. Once he gets up by us, I said, oh no, is he going to say that we're trespassing? And then he basically was talking to us, you getting any good photos? And I said, yeah, some pretty good photos. So he goes in the back of his vehicle and gives us two Norfolk Southern hats. So that was pretty cool. Here's the North Carolina train making its way over the bridge here. Yeah, it's really a neat location, especially to be able to shoot down from that hill at it is a really cool spot. Here's down by the bridge, and basically I'm by the street, so I'm able to get this angle shot here of the train going over the bridge. Here's another shot up on the hill. Clearly, this is a power move. As you can see, there's 5 locomotives here. That's the highway. I can't remember. It was at 85, Interstate 85, if I remember correctly. The train going underneath there. So Linwood, fairly huge yard that was built in the mid-90s. During COVID, they closed it down. And then they ended up using the old Spencer yard. The old Spencer yard, they had it jammed packed so much with so much stuff in there, they were using the main line to do moves with building a train. They closed the Linwood Yard, and which really, they started using it again a little bit. So here's the Linwood Yard. I went down one of those unmarked roads and took a few photos. This was a section that was kind of elevated on a hill, so I was able to get a few photos and then got out of there. My dad was driving. Basically, he said, "We'll blame the GPS if anybody said, hey, this damn GPS, damn technology." He's going to pull one of those. But anyway, I was able to get some photos here. During the height of COVID, when they did have the yard shut down, they had nobody in the tower. and they were doing maneuvers, to build a train. They had some poor guy in a pickup truck running back and forth, flipping switches. Because they had to go back and forth, to be able to do it. And I would hear it over the scanner, and it'd be hilarious just being able to hear that as well. Yes, beats walking, that's for sure. Lee is another favorite spot of mine. I've been able to capture a lot of trains here, and this is stuff that's coming out of the Lynwood Yard when the Lynwood Yard was open. I would see things coming out of a track that you can see here. So the train that's in the photo on the left, and the train that's on the left is on the main line. And then the train that's on the right there is coming out of the Linwood Yard. So this was literally the perfect storm. These photos are actually taken on my birthday, and I was railfanning with my dad. There was a train on the main line, as you can see there. There's a train coming out of the yard, and then there was another train in the shot that was over to the right of your screen, waiting on the signal to go in the yard. So I was like, we hit this perfect. We got a train here, we got a train here, we got a train here. So of course, that train had to come out so that one could go in. This train went by so that the trains could go in and out. So this was an awesome time to be there. So Lee, you can see the trains have to go up an incline there. You can see how like it's a gully down there. And then you can't really see in the shot, but the signals are they're not facing where we're at. But there's a signal way down the tracks, which we would use binoculars to go look to see if it was green or red. But Lee was a really cool location. Yet again, another road which used to go across the tracks. When they made it double track, they basically closed it. Here's another shot of at Lee, and this is on the other side of the tracks. There's another Heritage unit, nickel plate, making its way northbound. The cool thing about this location is they did crew swaps on the main line by the Linwood Yard all the time. So Landis is just south of Lee. So if I miss it in Landis, I would get on the highway, haul some mail, and then get up to Lee, crew swap, and then I would probably get it right at Lee. So a lot of times if they weren't fast about it, I'd have plenty of time. So the S line, I know George talked about the S line a little bit, as it's known today. I've got some photos from there. Was originally the Western Northern Carolina Railroad started construction of its 76 miles in the 1800s, and then basically ran down the line. And of course, it was extended, all the way to Asheville. It became a part of the Southern Railway system. But here's some photos from the S line. So this is at milepost number 2. So I got some photos here, and this is one of the sections of track. It's mostly a single line track, but here it's double lined, and then it makes its way west. Here's the diamond. Yep. That's at milepost 11.4. This was where the depot, somewhere in this area where it was. I was actually photographing this junction, and I saw the green signal. I was just doing this for documentation. I was probably thinking about doing a blog or something, and then I ended up seeing the green signal. I said, well, we're going to wait here because clearly something's coming. Trains do run down this line. I'm not too sure how many today, but it was at least about 2 or 3 trains a day when I was living down there. I'm not too sure what it is today. You can see there's a lot of grass there, but it does run service through. And here's the train making its way past the diamond here. I actually chased this coal train. So there's a Duke Energy plant that's in Mooresville, North Carolina. And I was able to get photos of this at Cleveland here on the S-line milepost 13.2. And of course, it had helpers on the rear because it's so heavy with all the coal. This is one of the trains that runs fairly often because they need it for the electric plant. Some of the depots along the line. So we're making our way to milepost 78.5. This is a real cool depot. You notice a lot of them will have this yellow color. Marion, North Carolina, milepost 99.6. I wasn't expecting this train. So I was doing a blog series about the depots along the S-line, and I was photographing this the station. Ended up getting a train going past. So ended up getting that, and also got several photos of the depot, and then of course the caboose that's next to it. And I believe they use this for office space, nothing railroad related. I don't think in the building. It may be different now. This was several years ago. Here's Old Fort, another depot, really cool there. Another caboose, as you can see, way over on the right of the shot. We're at milepost 109.7. And then Black Mountain, milepost 125.1. All right, so we've had our fulfill of a lot of Norfolk Southerns. Here's some CSX stuff. So my dad and I went out to Monroe to basically just check it out. So of course, CSX is using this building for their offices, so I was able to get some photos of that. Was able to get this cool shot of it's making its way to that train station and pass it. This was a cool shot, being able to shoot on top of an overpass. And here's the train now making its way to the train depot here. Here's another train. This is actually coming off this sub and then going on to the Charlotte sub. I was able to get a really cool passing shot of this train here. And here's another train coming off the Charlotte sub here. And then we've got Salima, which is a really cool spot. You can get some CSX traffic and some Amtrak traffic here through. All right. So make sure you're following, like, and subscribe to our social media, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, and Instagram at Train Aficionado. And you can definitely check out the website, trainaficionado.com. I actually have a blog there, Railfanning guides, and of course our event page. And then, of course, if you want to look at any of our live shows, you can see it on the website, which will take you to YouTube. And that is the end.